Words of joy and hope. Easter Vigil, Year A, Gospel according to St. Matthew chapter 28, verses 1 to 10, and commentary of Father Fernando Armelini.
After the Sabbath, as the first day of the week was dawning, Mary Magdalene and other Mary came to see the tomb.
Happy Easter! The Gospel text begins with reference to the time, as the first day of the week was dawning. Today we know when it was, April the 9th in the year 30, the day the Christians called the 8th day. The ancient baptistries were octagonal. This number became sacred to Christians because it indicated the Passover. They were octagonal because those who were baptized became conscious that they had entered into the day that would never end. Their life was no longer destined for a tomb, but for a life that does not die. On this Easter morning, two women move while it is still dark. They are Mary of Magdala, whom we know very well, and then another Mary, who is probably the one who was mentioned by the evangelist Matthew at the time of the burial of Jesus. She was the mother of James and Joseph. The evangelist Matthew narrates that when Joseph of Arimathea wrapped the body of Jesus in a white sheet and laid it in the tomb, rolled a stone to the entrance of the tomb and went away, and the evangelist says that many women were looking on from afar, and among them were Mary of Magdala and Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's James and John. On the Easter morning, this woman no longer appears. We can make an assumption. Who was this mother of the sons of Zebedee? The evangelist has already mentioned her because one day she presented herself to the Master to ask him that when he had entered into the glory and taken power, he should place at the right hand and on the left hand her two sons. They were dreaming in glory. This woman that Friday must have seen all her dreams crumble. And then we understand that on Easter morning she does not move anymore and leaves the scene discreetly because she saw that the story of the Master of Nazareth had ended tragically. What are these two Marys going to do at the grave? It is their affection for the Master that compels them to visit the place of the burial. It was customary to go to visit the grave for 3 days. But the verb used here in Greek is zeoresai, from the verb zeoreo, which means to go to contemplate, to reflect. It is not a mere gaze. They want to rethink what had happened. They are resigned, but they need to rework the morning and therefore also to talk to unburden themselves. They will cry and reflect on the death of the righteous one. The power, the force of money has won. There is nothing left but to resign oneself to the power of evil and lies, perhaps to realize that these negative forces will always have the better part. The righteous one has been defeated. The liberator has been reduced to silence, locked forever in a tomb. They must have thought that it was the history of the world. It has always been so and will always be so. The new world in which we had placed our hopes has failed. Those who have not yet received the light of Easter can only go to the grave of Zeorein to behold the victory of death. So, it is the triumph of the meaninglessness of life And if it is to end in a grave, one wonders if it is worth being born. The two Marys represent all those who have not yet received the light of Easter. They move thus. They will contemplate the destiny of the man who ends up in a tomb. Let us listen to what happens when these two women arrive at the tomb. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven, approached, rolled back the stone, and sat upon it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing was white as snow. Matthew narrates the women's visit to the tomb differently than the others. The other evangelists say that when they arrived at the tomb, the stone had already been removed from the mouth of the tomb. Matthew, on the other hand, says that the women witnessed a great spectacle. It is not a journalistic account of a fact. No, Matthew wants to present what happened at Passover, the most extraordinary intervention of God in history, when death was definitely defeated. And to present this truth, he has at his disposal a language and some images that all his readers understand because they are biblical images. The first of these images, and behold, there was a great earthquake. An earthquake is an extraordinary explosion of the forces of nature, and it is also used in the Bible. There is no other stronger image to indicate God's intervention. For example, when God descends on Mount Sinai to speak with Moses, the book of Exodus says that the whole mountain shook very much. When God comes, there is this shaking of the earth. It is in the depths of the earth that the most significant earthquake in the universe history occurs. Into the abyss of the earth entered all those who left this world and entered Sheol. When the patriarchs, David, the prophets, and the Baptist entered Sheol, nothing happened. Everything continued as before. All continued as before, prisoners of death. When Jesus entered Sheol, an earthquake occurred. A life that overcame death entered there. Let us note well, when Jesus entered there, it was not that he released all the prisoners of death and brought them back to the world. Notice the icon. The living Jesus in this world who preaches, then he who also enters Sheol, but does not come back here like Lazarus. He enters into the world of God, opens wide this door, and takes with him all who were born before him and had died before him. Now, this door to God's world remains open forever. He is the firstborn of these resurrected ones. And when it is said risen, it is not said that he returned to this life, but that he has entered the Father's house. We see that this earthquake is like the writhing of a laboring woman who is about to give birth to a life which never ends. The very life of those who have received from the Heavenly Father his own life. The second image, an angel of the Lord. This expression often appears in the Bible and does not indicate an angel as we imagine it. No. This expression indicates the Lord Himself and what He did on Passover day. For example, when the Lord speaks to Moses from the bush, the sacred author says, "The angel of the Lord spoke to Moses." That is the Lord Himself. And what does the Lord do? He comes down from heaven and removes the stone, opens the tomb. And at this time, he would expect to see Jesus coming out of the tomb. This has been imagined by our Western painters who, in their artwork, have presented a strong Jesus who comes out with the cross in his hand and returns here. No evangelist recounts the coming out of Jesus from the tomb. It is only an apocryphal gospel of the second century, the Gospel of Peter, which relates to the scene of Jesus coming out of the tomb. The gospel could not tell it because Jesus did not return to this life when the stone was rolled away. Jesus resurrected at the very moment he breathed his last breath. That was when he entered the world of Sheol, liberating all, and brought them into the Father's house. People had placed a stone sealing the tomb. It was a definite sign of victory over death. We also use the expression covered with a stone. They thought they had closed forever in the grave the one who wanted to usher in a new world. Instead, the angel sits victoriously on the stone, is the triumph over death. The stone had been sealed, and guards had been posted to keep that sepulchre always closed. God also broke those seals. Breaking the seals implied to defy the Caesar of Rome. The angel does so in defiance of the power of this world, of the rulers, of the oppressors who wanted to keep Jesus imprisoned forever in death, and says that the ancient world, the world of death, has been conquered, and every sign of death disappears because God has given humankind the same life that Jesus of Nazareth had and has. Then, the appearance of this angel. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing was white as snow. These are two other biblical images. Lightning is a divine attribute, it is the ultimate of light and power, and the color white indicates the fullness of light illuminating the darkness of the grave. We think of death as a passage from the light to the darkness of the grave. Now, one passes from the darkness of this world to the darkness of the grave, and one enters into the full light because Sheol has been illuminated by the Passover. Now enter the scene those on the side of death, those who would say that the tombstone should not be rolled away. They are the guards placed by the powers of this world, the political and religious powers. Let us listen. The guards were shaken with fear of him and became like dead men. Then the angel said to the women in reply, do not be afraid. I know that you are seeking Jesus the crucified. He is not here, for he has been raised just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he has been raised from the dead, and he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him. Behold, I have told you. Whom do these guards of the tomb represent? They represent all those who, out of self interest, out of servility, or out of ignorance, take sides in the service of the old world. They want to perpetuate the old world, which is the world of the rulers. They represent those who defend the world of death. These guardians are prey to the trembling of the earthquake. They see everything they had believed in, all their dreams collapsing. Now they fall and become as if unconscious. by the intervention of the Lord of history. The angel does not speak to them. They must realize for themselves that their life in the service of death is doomed to failure. And they will fall back into what counts in this world: money. They do not change. They do not let themselves be shaken by the earthquake. The angel speaks to the women: do not be afraid. But the guards must fear because they see all their projects fail. Then the angel gives the interpretation of the empty tomb. Look, he is not here. The tomb is empty. Also are empty all the tombs, because in the tombs only the remains are left there, not people. Since came to the tomb the divine power that Jesus of Nazareth had. The empty tomb is the sign, and when it is ascertained that this tomb is empty, one is prepared for the meeting with the risen one. The resurrected is no longer the one who has a body composed of atoms. He has the body of the risen one, which cannot be verified with our senses. This encounter that they have with the risen one, first the women and then the disciples, will be related by all the evangelists in the only language they have at their disposal, made of material images, to see, touch, and embrace the risen one. Luke even says, eating with the risen one. The revelation that the women receive from the heaven is that Christ is alive as he had said. Before that empty tomb, the women remember that Jesus had said that a donated life does not end in the darkness of a tomb, but in the light of God's world. The remembrance of this word makes these women see the risen one. And the angel's message: he is going before you to Galilee, there you will see him. What was Galilee? It was the land where Jews and Gentiles lived together. They were not purebred Jews, it was a mixed race. And this Galilee represents our world in which we live with people who seek God and people who are not interested in God. It's a mixed world with people that we love and with others whom perhaps we can't stand. This is what Galilee represents. They will see the risen one going to Galilee, where again Jesus leads his disciples as he leads us today. This is our Galilee. With this announcement of what we have seen with the eyes of faith, we will grasp the presence of Christ who is alive. We hear what the women do.
Then they went away quickly from the tomb, fearful yet joyful, and ran to announce this to his disciples. And behold, Jesus met them on the way and greeted them. They approached, embraced his feet, and did him homage. Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go tell my brother to go to Galilee, and there they will see me."
The women hastened to leave the tomb, for there was no longer any point in remaining to contemplate an empty tomb. And they run to announce to the disciples the experience they have had. They have not yet recognized the risen one, but they are ready to meet him because they have remembered what he said. And when they go to announce to their brethren that Christ is alive, the risen one comes out to meet them and says, "Don't be afraid." After Christ has passed through Sheol, humankind has no more to fear the darkness of a tomb because it has been illuminated. What do the women do? They embraced his feet and worshipped him. We will have embraced Jesus. Instead, the women embrace his feet. What is the meaning of this gesture? Because the Easter narratives insist on the hands and feet. Even the risen one says, "Look at my hands and my feet." The hands are the symbol of what he has done, and the feet symbolizes the road he has traveled. Let us remember that when he called his disciples, he said to them, "Come after me, follow in my footsteps." Those footsteps which apparently led to death, because Jesus always asked for the gift of life. Now the women have understood where those feet have gone, passing through the gift of life and then through death. They have come to the glory of God. It is essential to understand where the way of Jesus leads, the way that did not stop at Calvary. Those feet have gone much further, and we must contemplate the destiny of those feet. The words of the risen one are the same as those of the angel: "Fear not." Death is no longer to be feared after Jesus has crossed that dark valley that frightens us. It is beautiful what the risen Christ says, repeating the words of the angel: "Go and tell my brethren." Those who had forsaken, disowned, and betrayed him are still his brethren. The letter to the Hebrews will say that he is not ashamed to call us brethren because he loves us as we are. And to see these brethren, he has delivered the good news we proclaim to all people. I wish you all a happy Easter.